Hi everybody, welcome to the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey and I'm joined as always by Sam Proof. Today we're talking all about showing up well on camera. And I'm sure you've all been on the other end of this experience where maybe you're on a video call and somebody's peering through the darkness or they've got the camera strategically placed up their nose. It's not a great look. You don't need to spend a lot of money to improve how you appear on camera, and we're going to talk about that today. We are going out live to all the various places, and when I say places, I mean platforms, but also parts of the world. So let us know in the chat where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. But Sam, how has your week been? I have a feeling I know the answer already, but please tell us more.
I don't even know. It's been a constant, I've been moving around and doing things constantly, and my brain's not here anymore. I'm just in automatic mode. So yeah, that's about it. We have one small update on the kitten side of the world, which is we returned our kittens, or replaced our kittens in the Cat Cafe Lounge a few days ago. So we've been running a playlist for a while. Tomorrow we get new cats, so we will be back to live tomorrow. How's everything with you?
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Again, it's been a very, very busy week, and I must admit the seasons are changing here in Australia, and it's funny. I'd been complaining that it had been a little cool in the mornings yesterday, and you know, the next thing I know, they're reporting we're going to have the hottest summer we've ever had. So that's something I'm not really looking forward to, but otherwise, things are going pretty well. So
yeah, we just had the hottest summer, and I'm like, I am ready for cold, rainy, keep me inside weather. Do it.
Absolutely. Okay, so today we're talking all about actually showing up well on camera and some of the things that you can do. We are talking mostly about visuals today. I put out a poll earlier in the week, and some people were like, you know, if I was going to invest in some equipment, I would go with audio, which is totally fair, but that's probably a whole other show. But today, let's think about some of the things that we can actually do to improve how we show up on camera. So I guess, Sam, first we probably need to think a little bit about, you know, how, and Business Growth Ready has already, in the comments, buy a nose hair trimmer or rise your camera. That's certainly one way of doing it.
That is,
but certainly in terms of, you know, what are we actually using to be on camera, you know, whether it's your phone or webcam or, you know, a DSLR or something in between. Like, what do you think of the things are that people should think about in terms of showing up well?
Yeah, I mean, you start with what you have available and, you know, find the room for improvement. So whatever your budget is at that point, you know, there's always another better camera that you can get. But almost everybody out there who's doing anything already has an iPhone or a phone, let's say a smartphone, with a decent camera. So that's a good place to start. You can easily bring these into your stream, or a lot of, you know, the major platforms just have mobile apps that will let you stream through your phone, and that's a good enough place to start, and then you just build out from there. If you do already have a webcam, or you're looking to do everything from like a specific position, like I'm at a desk and I just want this here and ready to go, because, you know, even with a phone, there's some amount of setup involved. I want to just know that I can sit down, turn the computer on, and go. The Logitech C920 has been the standard for years and years and years. I think it's only now starting to kind of fade out of that spotlight because Logitech's released better cameras at this point, and there's a lot of clones out there that you can get through certain e-commerce sites for very cheap. But that's it right there that John has. It's fantastic camera.
That. So I guess that's a great point, though. It's important to start with what you got. And the thing that we always say on this show is you really want to work out whether it's a podcast, whether it's a video show, that you work out what you want to do before you invest a lot of money. And this is, I guess the other part of this is, and we want to talk about this in a moment, but is essentially that it's on a tripod so we can position it. Because the thing about the web cameras is they do actually have a thing where you can put them on top of your monitor, but that's not usually a great place for them to sit. Like that's usually not looking directly at you. It's going to be sort of above you or maybe underneath you, depending on how much flexibility you have in terms of repositioning the monitor itself. But I guess, you know, and this I sort of show this this webcam on a tripod because this is basically where I started. And tripods are really, really useful in terms of positioning your camera. And I guess the thing that I often come back to is I like to reduce friction in my content creation processes. So and I'll show you my setup in a little bit, but essentially, like, I just want to be able to click on a couple of buttons and be ready to go.
Yep.
Which is not always, even with that sort of camera and that cheap tripod, it would move around a lot, and I would have to reposition it on the desk, and I would have to make sure that it hadn't sunk down in the frame. So I was positioning that every time I used it. So I have, and I know we've spoken about this in previous shows, but I always like to show this because I think it's cool, but also it's changed my life, and that is simply that I have my camera sort of permanently mounted, and we can talk about this setup. But the great thing about this is I can turn on my lights, I can hit the button on the camera, and I'm pretty much ready to go at any moment. And the other nice thing about this, which is it's not obvious from this photo, is that and I don't want to get too technical, but let's unpack what you are actually seeing on this screen. So I have two Elgato key lights, and we'll talk about lights more in a moment. But they have the multi-mount system, and that is mounted to the desk. And off that arm, essentially, are coming two strong arm units. One holds the camera, one holds the teleprompter. And the great thing about this is that this whole contraption is attached to my standing desk. So I can raise this or lower this, and it's always sort of in direct proportion to the desk itself. But the great thing about that is, it's pretty much at the eye level that I want it to be at all times. And, it gets things off your desk, which is really useful. And I say that as probably the person on the planet who has the messiest desk in the world. And I'm going to have to take a few days off just to clean it at this point. It just got cables and microphones and CDs and DVDs and all kinds of crap on this desk, which is, this is a great opportunity to learn from my mistakes. But yeah, in terms of, actually finding an eye level and maybe reducing some of that friction, that can be a really useful thing to do. I just want to say hi to CG for joining us as well. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. So I guess, I think you've got some tripods and gimbals and things, so maybe we should talk about that next.
Sure. I do want to say that I just saw recently a webcam that suction mounts to your monitor. It's yay big. It's pretty small. And I'm like, I'm hesitant to think it's a good idea, because I'm like, I feel like it's going to be in the way. No matter where on my monitor it is, it's just something that's going to bother me. But, if you're out there and it's not going to bother you, look into that. And
I guess, just before we continue, you just reminded me of something. I actually had somebody from a company, I think they're called PlexiCam, reach out to me ages and ages ago, and I don't think I ever got back to them, which is my bad. But essentially, they've got this plastic contraption that sits on top of your monitor. Because it's transparent. You can sort of put a webcam or a video cam on top of it. But again, I kind of, I don't really want to be looking at my monitor too much. And also, I even though the PlexiCam device itself is sort of transparent, the camera itself never will be. So, that's something you've got to contend with a little bit.
Yeah. I think, especially when you're dealing with like the Logitech. I mean, it's like a good 2 inches. Like that feels like that's going to block a lot. This other thing looked maybe the size of like a penny, which I can't imagine the quality on that's amazing, but maybe it's good enough. But yeah, I don't have my big solid tripod, but I think everyone knows what a regular tripod looks like. I will hope. That is in fact what this camera is on, is a standard tripod that you can get I believe it's an Amazon Basics. If not, they definitely have one that is like a $25 tripod. And it's going to do just fine for, something that's stationary like that, where you're just going to pop in and be like, I'm on. I have a bunch of these sort of bendable tripods. These are, like a $10 to $15 tripod. You could probably find some cheaper ones and some more expensive ones. These are really for like, I'm on the go and need to do something, but I do also have my makeshift Like sometimes I need this on my scissor mount for other things. Usually I'm using this to have like a phone on here, so I can use that as yet another monitor for chat and things like that. This is one of my favorite new tripods. Is this itty bitty little thing, which I think this was like $8-9. And this is specifically for phones, and it expands just a little, and you got some feet here. But something that I discovered like a month or two in is that this whole thing unscrews, and you can put this mount on a standard tripod head for your phone if you need to. If you have like an older tripod that doesn't sort of do the vertical repositioning, or you just find this easier because you're trying to go from thing to thing. Yeah, I've used this little one a lot, especially for like when I'm out doing restaurant videos and things like that. Not so much with live, but yeah, that's a pretty good tripod. And then I have this gimbal, which also, again, does attach to a tripod if you want. And this, if you're doing moving shots, this is great. This will give you that sort of steady cam feel without everything being all jerky. I don't know if turning it on is going to do much of anything because there's no phone in it, but it does move around and stuff like that. And depending on the gimbal, there's tons that are like this that, there you go.
Nice.
But yeah, there's this is an older one. There's tons of these. Some of the newer ones, they have their own apps built in that let you control a lot of the functions from the gimbal itself on the phone, like zoom and start and stop record and things like that. And it's vibrating now, so I'm going to turn it off. But yeah, this is a great gimbal, and they've only gotten better.
And I must admit, like there are all kinds of tripods, and especially the mini tripods, the desk tripods. They can be so handy to have on standby, and they're not very expensive.
Yeah,
it's funny. This one that I've got here is sort of a selfie thing. Like it's actually got a little Bluetooth remote that's associated with it as well. So there's all kinds of things you can do with them, and they're relatively cheap. I guess the thing that you want to think about is having the camera sort of roughly at eye level, or maybe a little bit above you. Again, unless you're doing something for dramatic movie type purposes, that's probably the areas you want to stay in. So again, and a lot of the cheaper tripods, they come with the phone attachments too, which are so handy, and it gives you a lot of choices in terms of what you're actually using.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot better than just trying to, jimmy your phone up on a shelf or something and hope it doesn't fall over. I even have literally this little guy that I got from a dollar store, which you do have to find something high enough to put it on, but is very sturdy. And I'm sure for the 3D printer enthusiasts out there, there's a very simple model file you can get for something like this, or for pretty much any tripod, really.
I guess the only thing I would say is if you do have a serious expensive camera, like just be a little bit wary about, putting it in weird positions with cheap tripods, because it's not worth damaging your camera for.
Yeah, I'm not putting my DSLR on the bendable one, even though they definitely had a picture of that on their Amazon page. I don't trust it for that. But a phone, sure. Something that's under half a pound, not a problem.
Absolutely. Okay, so this is the video and live streaming show. We're talking all about showing up well on camera, and we'll be back in just a moment.
We are constantly training our cats every interaction that we have with them. So when Johan would get on my counter before, this is 10 years ago, before I was the cat expert that I am now, Johan would jump on the counter. What was the first thing I did? I'd say his name, Johan. He loves that. That's a reward for him. He said, you just said my name. I would go over to him and I talk to him and be like, you can't be on the counter. Johan loves when I talk to him. Ding, that's another reward for Johan. I'd pick him up and put him on the ground, but I didn't want him to think I was mad at him. So when I'd pick him up very nicely and kiss him on the head and say, I love you, but you can't be here. I'd put him on the ground. I had just done 3 things that rewarded him for being on the counter. So I was encouraging him to continue doing that.
And that's a segment from Just Kitten Around, which is Sam's podcast all about cats and kittens. And you can learn more about that over at cuteavalanche.com.
Yep.
So today we're talking all about showing up well on camera. So whether it's a video meeting, whether it's a podcast or a video show, or even just a YouTube video, we want to think about how we can improve how we show up. And you don't necessarily need to break the bank. There are some great equipment and gear out there, but again, just think about what your needs are and don't get too carried away, especially if you're starting out. But I think we need to talk about lighting because cameras capture light, essentially. So, and I guess personally, even, I sort of was talking about that Logitech C920 a little bit ago. When I first started just having calls for work via my computer, I actually used a desk lamp, which was an LED one, and I could sort of position the light around to shine directly into my face, and it was bizarre how much that improved how I actually showed up on camera. And it's funny. I don't think you need a lot of lights. You just need some good light, and you need to sort of think about it strategically. One of the things that I sort of encourage people to do, especially if you're recording or going live during the day, is just to position yourself in front of a large window. You are sort of at the mercy of the weather a little bit there. So, if it is an overcast day or a rainy day, you may not get quite the lighting that you're working with, in which case you might need to think about some artificial light sources as well. I know there are all kinds of options out there, Sam. What sort of things do you think people should consider when they're just looking for some artificial light to get started?
Sure. So yeah, again, just to reiterate, the sunlight, specifically diffused sunlight, which is not directly on you because that'll cast a lot of shadows, but like a sort of a general diffused sunlight is going to be the best. But in lieu of that, you want to get one or two lights really, which is kind of what I have going on here, is two lights that come through a soft box that is diffusion. And generally we're going for warmer light for people. You don't want cold lights. There's a whole light temperature thing. So when you're buying your bulbs, you would like to get warm bulbs, sunlight bulbs, daylight bulbs, things like that. You can find really good sets that'll get the job done on like Amazon for $100 or so. That will give you something like this, where it's lights on a stand. It's usually like 3 lights with soft boxes, which is the diffusion that I was talking about earlier. But that's going to take up a lot of room. So, like I've crammed these things into about a 5x5 space, but ideally I would be in like a 10, like a 10 by 10. So yeah. I mean, that's what it's looking like. You could find, some common household lights, but then you just have to pay attention to, like the bulbs that you're using. The biggest problem with just grabbing light sources from wherever you have in your house, be like, I got a lamp here and a lamp here, is generally those lamps are going to be like non-directional. The light's going to be going all over the place, not just focused forward. And the second thing is, there's a very good chance that they have different bulbs, and those different bulbs have different temperatures or colors, and it's going to show up and be funny. And what you really want is not just brightness, because you don't want to overdo it. You don't want to have like hot spots, and you don't want to have an extreme amount of contrast where you have like really bright whites and dark darks. You kind of want to find a balance in the middle, but you do want to play with contrast. So you have like a darker background and a brighter foreground being the person. So those are the things you should keep in mind. And if your space doesn't allow for, a 10 by 10 light setup, then you might have to look into putting a little more money into it to getting something like John has, which are the Elgato key lights.
Absolutely. And I guess we'll talk about those specifically in a moment. But, when you are first starting out, like we encourage you to get, start scrappy and just use whatever you've got lying around. Again, the point about the omnidirectional lighting that Sam just made is a good one, of course. But a lot of LED lamps and things now can be quite directional. So it's just a matter of seeing what you've got. But I guess we know that there are selfie lights. There are little ring lights. The only complaint I kind of have when it comes to the ring lights, and again, I don't have an example to show you right now, but essentially these are circular lights and they have a place in the middle for the camera to actually live for the most part. The only thing I find a little distracting about that is I see the round shape sort of reflected in the eye of the person that's that's on camera. And that can be like it's genuinely a little bit otherworldly, like it's straight out of an alien sci-fi film. Which, and I mention that only because that's a thing I notice. And if you've got a ring light, don't feel bad about it. I'm sure it's great. But I guess
that was the one note that I was going to say about ring lights. I mean, they're fine lights. They're usually LED, and they produce usually a range of temperature, so you can tone that into where you want it. But yeah, you're going to get this weird, like, little circular halo in your eye, and it is definitely something that people are going to notice immediately.
And it's funny because I think on a platform like Instagram, where you've got lots of beauty vloggers, like I think they embraced that look. And I think, if you're in a community where that makes sense, by all means, go for it. I tend to find that a little bit distracting. But I guess the other thing too, we're two white guys not wearing glasses. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that different people may need different things in terms of light temperature and brightness. And also, if you are wearing glasses on camera, you have to be a little bit mindful that they're not sort of, just bouncing off the glasses themselves. Often, if you can position one of the lights a little bit higher, so it's sort of shining down on you rather than straight ahead, that can be helpful. But again, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that different people might need different things. But let's talk about the Elgato key lights specifically. So I've actually got a video I'll play for you a little bit later. But again, I'm just to start us off. So you can sort of see them at the top left and right of this shot. So they're quite thin. Sam was talking about his lighting setup taking up a lot of space. These are actually quite flat. They do attach to the desk themselves, although you can get sort of free standing mount type arrangements as well. And I've got sort of one on the left and one on the right. The great thing about this is the Elgato Key Light Control Center will let me adjust the light temperature and the brightness. I've never used more than 5 or 6% of brightness on these ever. So I'm really fascinated to see what it actually looks like if I were to turn that all the way up. I've just never needed it. The one thing that is a little bit tricky, a bit counterintuitive, I guess, about these lights is they're sort of operated by Wi-Fi. And Wi-Fi is great, but I don't usually want to be streaming via Wi-Fi because, if there is a problem with the connection, that's going to impact my live stream. So in this case, what I do is I actually run that Elgato Control Center app from my phone, which is also connected to the same network, and just turn that on and off as I need to. If I was using Wi-Fi to stream, I could also set up some controls on my Stream Deck, but I don't really want to do that because I'm always a little bit nervous about what that might do for my connection. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. So again, just keep in mind though that these are an investment, and this is definitely not where I started. As I said, I had a desk lamp. It was less than $100, and I literally just pointed at my face and away I went. The only problem with that was that after an hour-long meeting, it kind of was a bit like staring into the sun. Like I had to just move away from the computer for a while because it was a bit too intense. Yeah. But again, we have all kinds of options out there, and you'd be surprised how little light you need to actually make a huge difference in terms of what you actually see on camera.
Yeah, and again, like if I could do everything by sunlight, I would, but there's no windows in here. So I gotta do what I gotta do.
And it's funny because one of the first things Sam mentioned there was, you don't want to be in direct sunlight. And I guess because I'm always creating inside, I never even think about that. But if I was out on location or, going for a walk or something, that would be a consideration I need to think about. So yeah, that's I mean, I'd be really interested to hear from people watching live or maybe later on what kind of camera you're using, what kind of lighting you're using, and if you did have money to actually invest in your setup, where would you put that? And again, that's a poll I've actually run on a number of different social media sites this week. It's interesting. A lot of people were sort of talking about the camera. Some of them are talking about the background, which is something we'll talk about in a little bit. There are all kinds of options, but again, we talk about gear. We love gear. We're gear enthusiasts, but at some point you really need to think about, is this going to improve your setup, or are you just distracted by the shiny object syndrome? So keep that in mind, but hopefully, just to think about what you could do to maybe improve your setup, even just a little bit.
Hi, I'm John Lacey, and in Build a Presentation Muscle, I want to talk about finding your voice, refining and sharing your message, using tools and technology to share that message, and looking after yourself as a creator.
And that's just a plug for my podcast, Build a Presentation Muscle, which you can learn more about over at johnlacey.com. We've been talking about workflows on the podcast recently, so I'd love it if you could check that one out. But talking about today's subject on the video and live streaming show, we're talking about how you can show up well on camera and how you can feel and look better on camera. I guess the great thing about looking good on camera is that you will actually feel better and you'll feel more confident. It's amazing. And this is often a stumbling block for a lot of people that, they just don't want to be in front of the camera. So there's an element of getting over that fear. But I cannot overstate how good or how much good lighting and a good camera can really add to your confidence in that regard. So if you do intend to appear on camera a lot, it's worthwhile sort of investing in those things. But right now we want to talk about the backgrounds. And again, if you are watching this, if you're not listening to the audio only version, you'll see that Sam and I have very different approaches to backgrounds. So Sam, maybe if you can talk us through what's going on behind you.
Yeah, don't do this. So I have my desk set up. This works fine for my personal streams and stuff like that. But I would always err on the side of advising you to have clean backgrounds. The thing that you should keep in mind is what you can do to separate your subject from the background. So I try to have my background sort of very dark, my subject a lot brighter. On days where I wear a black shirt, that's a terrible idea. I just fall into it. But I have some nice mellow light happening to help make it a little prettier because it is full of way too much stuff. I would, ideally tell you to clean this out, have a very thematic thing, but this is a working desk. I'm actually have things in folders and, stuff here that I need to use. But whatever you can do to have a very clean background or a solid color, anything like that, I think is preferred. There's a lot of really good examples. I think it's the vidIQ, but it might be the TubeBuddy guys who have sort of a big desk kind of scenario of shelves and whatnot, but it's all very white. And they only have a few knickknacks in some of those shelves. So I think that's a really great setup. I could point out to a bunch of difference. But yeah, you will primarily want to separate your subject from your background. And one of the best ways to do that is for it to be a solid or a dark, and your foreground object, your person, to be much brighter. Yeah.
And I think that's a great point. We want to think about the contrast there. And 9 times out of 10, we really want you as the on-camera talent to be the thing that people are looking at. And again, for the benefit of people who might be listening to the audio-only version of this show, Sam has a physical background behind him. I'm in front of a green screen 24/7. And the reason I'm behind a green screen 24/7 is simply that there is nothing attractive behind me. There's the side of a bookcase, there's a door, there's probably all kind of junk just hanging out back there. So I'm going to talk to you more about the the logistics in terms of software and settings and things that go into that, because there is a bit of OBS Studio magic that happens wherever I go on camera. But essentially, I guess and people have a lot of feelings about green screens. People are worried about not lighting them well. They're sort of worried. And again, we sort of joked about this a few shows ago. One morning, I didn't really think about what I was wearing, and I wore something that had a lot of green in it. And, it basically had me as a floating head on camera, which is something you need to consider if you are in front of a green screen. But I guess the other great thing about this is, as someone who does a lot of software tutorials, I can just throw myself into the corner of a screen and talk people through different things. And that's been really, really useful for me. And this is a very reasonably cheap. Like it's a tall green screen. I got it off eBay. I don't even remember how much it was. It wasn't a lot of money. And I'll talk you through some of the things that I do to make that look the way it does in a little bit. But I guess if whether you've got a green screen, whether you don't have a green screen, I think some of the things we need to think about is, what is your background actually saying about you? And, we've seen so many examples of people that are being interviewed on the news that have something, maybe a little bit inappropriate placed somewhere behind them, whether they realized they were doing that or not. I sort of joke about not having a voodoo doll of your boss behind you when you're having your video calls. But you really want to think about what is actually there. And often you may be too familiar with what's going on behind you to really notice weird things. So it may be worthwhile just sort of calling a friend and saying, hey, is there anything objectionable in the background that you notice? But if you are actually going to have a physical background, it's a great way to actually collate, the surroundings. So if you've got a book to promote, you should really have that somewhere behind you. If you've got sort of qualifications or awards or things that maybe lend to your credibility, they're a great thing to include in the scene as well. So I guess, it's just really thinking about, making sure that the background supports you rather than distracts from you.
Yeah, I was just going to say, whether you have a physical set or a green screen, keep in mind, that maybe you want to lean towards something that is a static or a still image and not something that's moving, that's going to draw the attention away from the subject for your viewers. So yeah, like, unless there's something you're specifically going for, I would always avoid any kind of animated thing happening in the background.
Absolutely. And I guess I have seen in recent weeks people wanting to use animated backgrounds, and that's fine if your computer can handle it, if your internet connection can handle it, because the minute it starts getting a little bit laggy or jittery, then it becomes more distracting than if you had nothing at all there. So it's really important that you test these things out.
That's a really good point, because the more stuff that's moving on your screen, the more your CPU and your GPU and your bit rate are going to have to deal with that. So if you've got just confetti constantly fluttering down, it's taking a lot more bandwidth to actually compress all of that information and send it off to the platform, as opposed to 80% of my screen is still and I'm in the center moving.
Absolutely. Okay, so I guess, we've spoken about cameras, lighting, and backgrounds. And again, the thing that I always like to stress is you need to find something that works for you. So we can give you ideas, but really you need to figure out what's going to work for you, because your needs and your setup may be different to ours, and that's totally cool. But again, we just want to make sure that you're being shown in your best light, literally and figuratively in this case. So, whatever you can do to improve that would be wonderful. So I'm going to actually play a video. I'm cringing about this video a little bit because of a couple of reasons. But it's a very, very old video, but I think it really will help you understand some of the magic that goes on for my personal setup. Okay, so I wasn't quite ready for that screen share, so I will turn that off for a second. And I've just made it larger. Hang on. Okay, well, we'll come back to that in a second. Okay. So anyway, just again, I'm conscious of the fact that some people may be listening to the audio version of this show later on. So basically, it was just a 30-second clip of me waking up, rolling out of bed in my hoodie, looking like trash, and then setting up the green screen, which I only did for the benefit of that video. It kind of lives in its permanent location these days. But again, I wanted to show you the kind of clutter and random objects that are literally behind me if I don't have it there. And then I take you into OBS Studio and show you how I sort of remove the green screen and add my branding elements. And I guess that's what I want to talk about now, is that we talk about OBS Studio from time to time, and people are scared of this software, and there are a lot of paid companies that really ramp up that fear for their own benefit, and we really want to destigmatize it because it's not scary and it's incredibly powerful and incredibly useful. But you don't need to know all the settings to get started. You don't need to, have a working knowledge of every single thing that's happening. And for today's show, I really wanted to talk about one particular feature of OBS, which is the virtual camera. Now, the virtual camera, and again, it's sort of, you just saw it in action for those of you watching the video, was that, I can set up my scene, and my scene can be a collection of objects, including my camera, graphics, text, calls to action, QR codes, whatever I want. And the great thing about that is I can actually hit that start virtual camera button, and I think I've got a graphic for this, so let me throw that on the screen. I can set up my scene in OBS Studio, and I can hit the start virtual camera option. And then if I go into any software that uses a web camera, like Zoom, like Microsoft Teams, like Google Meets, like StreamYard or Restream Studio, I can actually go in and select the OBS virtual camera from the list. And that way, anything that's happening visually in OBS is actually being presented to you here. And that's something that I always do because I'm always in front of the green screen. I know that a lot of software offer kind of pretend green screen software options, but they're really not great. As somebody who uses a lot of Microsoft Teams, and everybody I know is using those settings, it cuts off parts of their head. If they move, you suddenly see the background. It's not a great setup. So, this is something that I kind of use everywhere I go for any kind of video. And, the great thing about this is that I can control this, and it doesn't matter what software I ultimately end up in. So I interviewed somebody on my podcast once. They're always in front of a green screen, but they rely very much on the software that they're going to deal with that. And some pieces of software will let you do that easily, and some won't. So again, let me just see if I can. I'm sort of ad-libbing a bit of a. Actually, is there anything that you wanted to add, Sam? I feel
while John plays with that, just something else I wanted to bring up way earlier, like in the camera section of things, is, when you're dealing with like a live stream or a Zoom kind of situation, think about the frame that you want. Like what we like to do is basically a head and shoulders, and then fill the frame pretty much as possible with your person, which for most streams, I think is going to be ideal. There's obviously, situations where you might want more. Like if you're doing some sort of home shopping QVC style thing, you may need a larger frame or a larger subject, things like that. If you're doing a picture-in-a-picture, specifically like you're a Twitch streamer who's doing a game, keep in mind that while you could place yourself anywhere on the screen, and maybe the game, has readouts that you need to avoid so your viewers can see that, the optimal place for you is going to be in that bottom right-hand corner, because it's going to keep your chat right next to your face, and that's easier for your viewers to sort of go back and forth on, So yeah, those just some food for thought.
Absolutely, and I guess that's an interesting thing, and often one of the things that we do before this show goes live is that Sam is pretty much within his frame at all times, but because I've got that green screen magic, I can actually pretty easily sort of resize and reposition myself within the frame. So
Yeah.
that's sort of a great thing to keep in mind. I'm going to try one of these layouts. I'm not sure how effective this will be, but we will just wing it. Okay, there we go. I think that'll do.
Yep.
All right, so basically I'm showing OBS Studio on the screen here today. So again, I'd love to do, I love this software, I really do, and I'd love to share more information about it as we go along. So essentially, once we've downloaded and installed OBS, we've got our scenes and we've got our sources. So basically, if you were just using something for a virtual camera just so that you can adjust how you appear in a single scene, then you can just use one scene and not worry too much about what else is happening on the computer. I'm going to come down here to add source, and I'm going to go to video capture device. And I'm actually going to use this Logitech, so I might give this one just the name of Logitech. Again, it doesn't really matter too much what you call these things. The important thing is that you recognize them, because you can potentially have a lot of these as we go along. So from the device options, I'm going to go down until I see the webcam C920. And there you go, you can sort of see me. This is not a particularly great angle, but because it's a second camera, for demonstration purposes, I just wanted to put it on the screen somewhere. I'm pretty sure I can get a better resolution out of this, so I'm probably just going to try that. Okay, that's cool. I think that works better. So essentially, you know, this is another angle. This is a different angle to the one I've got. You can probably pretty easily see the differences between the Sony camera and the Elgato, the Logitech in terms of quality, and also the different angles. Again, it's not going to be a great demonstration of this because it is the second option, but if I right click on my source and go to filters, I've got audio and video filters and effect filters. I think it's under, okay, it must be under effect filters. I can actually go to color key, and I could sort of adjust the green screen there, and, you know, potentially take that out. Again, I don't really have settings ready to go, but, you know, I could actually come in here and make that change potentially. In fact, what I would probably do is grab the settings from elsewhere. So let's not worry about that today too much, but I just wanted to bring your attention to that in the event that you are in front of a green screen. So I might just turn that off for the moment. But again, if you want to think about, you know, actually maybe resizing this, so you can come in and click here. And if you hold down the Alt key, you can actually drag this in and sort of crop it. So again, depending on how things are positioned and what you actually want on the screen, you can bring those things in there as well. I can actually resize this by not holding down the Alt key and then just sort of dragging a corner and make this as large or as small as I want it to be. And I can sort of come in and add a whole bunch of different sources. So maybe, you know, obviously in the main, you know, my main setup, you'll see that I have a particular background color behind me. Sometimes I will have my logo on screen. I don't think I've got that at the moment. But there are things that I can sort of bring in and out from time to time in that way. And I might even, I'm just going to break out of that, and I'm going to bring over I've got two versions of OBS running at the moment for purposes of demonstration, but I'm actually going to bring this one in, which is sort of the live one. So here I've got things, you know, there's also potentially a vertical option here. We're not going to worry too much about the vertical one today, but certainly if I wanted to bring in different things in here, I could do that. I'm just looking for my logo. I do have the logo there, but I guess what I wanted to say is that you can have different things appear on your screen or disappear. So at the moment, you can see I've got the logo in the corner there. All I need to do is click that little eye icon, and that can disappear. So we could have all kinds of different things on here. So I've got a bit of a promo for my podcast to build a presentation muscle. So again, I can toggle the visibility of that on and off. And if you have a Stream Deck, you can actually sort of set up buttons to just easily turn these things on and off. And if we go back to the other version of this, down the bottom, you'll see that we've got the Start Virtual Camera option. And in the way that I sort of alluded to before, if you hit that button, whatever's happening on your frame there, you can go into your software and actually just make sure that you start the virtual camera, it's going out live, and that way you can actually sort of use that. One thing that is important to keep in mind with the virtual camera, though, is that it is it is sort of exclusively for visuals. So although you can play audio and video through OBS Studio, it's not going to come through to a virtual camera application. So that is something you do need to keep in mind. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on in the comments. I've been a little bit distracted doing my demonstration.
Cat-related, sorry.
So Nathan Volts joining us in the chat. So this is how you resize a window. Okay. Well, actually, Nathan, we're talking about how you could use the OBS Studio virtual camera to sort of demonstrate how you can show up in different ways in any sort of software that supports a video camera or web camera. So yes, and you know there are so many cats coming to Cute Avalanche. So. Again, this is kind of an on-the-fly demonstration today. There are a lot of other things I would love to show you, but sometimes it's a really good idea to record these things and then just bring them to the live stream instead of try to do everything live, because there are just so many moving parts. But I mean, obviously, Sam, and I say obviously, people won't know this, so I don't know why I'm saying obviously, but even though, you know, what we see in your frame is essentially you and your background. It's just a sort of a web camera view or a video camera view. It is also coming through OBS Studio via the virtual camera as well.
Yes.
So why do you do that?
So I'm actually doing this and sending just my camera source. I could send an entire scene with, like, you know, a logo and a promotional thing. I just send my camera source, and I'm doing it so that I can record locally my camera as a high-res file that I'm just, you know, archiving on a drive, as opposed to relying on the StreamYard software to give me a decent quality thing. Because, you know, once you're sending it out there through, you know, to at least two servers, you know, one to take it and one to receive it, and who knows what's in between. There could be degradation of the signal. There could be lag. There could be any number of digital issues. So if I get the opportunity to record the source video feed, that's going to be better. So that is why I use the virtual camera in this scenario.
Absolutely, and that's really useful. I'm just fascinated by the chat. So Ryex saying Sam is the best. He invented cameras and the internet and streaming, and also the rock genre of music. So you've been very, very busy. Nathan's saying that your set is nice, which I totally agree with. And Claire is lurking as well. Thank you for swinging by, Claire. Great to have your company today. So this is the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey, and I'm joined as always by Sam Proof. Today we've been talking about how you can show up well on camera. Again, you know, the things that we've been focusing on today have been the camera, the lighting, the background, and also additionally just a little bit of the OBS Studio virtual camera and how I sort of use that in my setup to change how I show up in different places. Predominantly because I am in front of this green screen 24/7, and this just helps me, you know, compensate for the fact that I'm in this view. So, yeah. Okay, cool. So, basically, we're really curious if you are creating any kind of content, if you are streaming, if you are recording videos. We'd love to hear about your setup. That's always really interesting to us. There's obviously a lot of gear out there that you can use. I guess the thing that I always say is it really just depends on what's going to work for you. So, you know, don't be seduced too much by all the marketing that's out there. Just find something that will work nicely. I don't know who this friend of yours is, Sam, but they write, I'm a vampire and have an extremely difficult time appearing on cameras, mirrors, or the water surface.
I mean, that's accurate. That's how that works.
Okay, cool. So, you know, Sam, if people do want to get more exciting content, I'm not quite wrapping up just yet, but I know there's a Discord that you might like to send them to. Can you tell people about that a little bit?
Yeah, you can head over to my Discord at samproof.tv/Discord. I have a creators corner in there, and there's channels for individual things like YouTube creators, live streamers, artists, and stuff like that. So you can jump over there. If you're an artist, you can share your work. If you're looking for help you can always post a listing of like, hey, I'm looking for editors or things like that. Or if you just have questions about live streaming, go head over there, drop your questions, and I will answer them as soon as possible. So join me on Discord. Or if you just want to hang, yeah.
Absolutely. So Nathan brings up something interesting.
Sure.
I'd like to see some in real life streams from either of you. Sam could show chat around LA. It's interesting. And it's funny because I'm such a desktop creator. I'm so attached to this computer 24/7. So I don't do a lot out in the wild, and it's funny. At one point, I was even trying to go live to Instagram via my phone, and I just hated the audio and the visual quality of it. But maybe we can try some of those things out, because there are all kinds of ways of doing that. And I guess as long as your phone has a decent connection and you've got power, there are certainly ways of doing those sorts of things.
Yeah, that was the one thing I was going to say is I actually have done quite a few IRL streams. I used to do a morning drive stream when I was working in Mid-City. It was like an hour-long drive, and I was bored out of my mind. So I was like, I'm going to live stream. And for the most part, it was probably unwatchable because when you're traveling specifically, your phone is constantly reconnecting to new cell towers. And that can really mess with the signal. If you're, out and about at a significant, location, like I'm going to do a mukbang from a restaurant, that's probably better. You're not moving too much. So yeah, something like that is possible, but you do have to keep in mind that, moving around can have some connection issues.
And I guess at the end of the day, that example that you just gave about being at a restaurant, even if I were to do that, a part of me would want to record that and edit it and not necessarily do it live. So, I mean, sometimes live is about the interaction. Sometimes it's about just kicking back and chilling. There are all kinds of applications for that kind of thing. But again, you've just got to figure out what's going to work for you, what your goals are as a creator, and what you're interested in exploring.
Well, if anyone wants to donate money to my cause and have me go to different places in LA, I'll do that for $50 plus gas. No, that's a whole other stream.
Okay, so Sam, where can people find out more about you and all those good things and what's your contents and that stuff?
You can find all of my social links at samproof.tv right at the top there. For the most part, I'm everywhere doing everything all at once against my better judgment. And if you want to see some cute cats starting Saturday, we're going to have a whole bunch of new cats over at Cute Avalanche on our Twitch, but you can find that from cuteavalanche.com and help us save cats, help us save lives.
Absolutely. And if you want to head out, if you want to find out things that I'm up to, you can head over to johnlacey.com. Got a whole bunch of articles about OBS Studio and streaming and other things. And there are social links at the bottom of that page as well. So that's, I'm sort of curious. I've got to check in with the comments here a little bit as well. And again, I never know if people are being sincere or sarcastic in the comments, but somebody is commenting on the John Lacey merch. So there are actually two. There's a blue one and a white one, and I sort of try to alternate them each week. So if you go back and look in the archives, you'll see a different one. I don't actually sell these because it really is my personal brand. But yes, I love the fact that it is so easy to get your own merch created these days, and I'm sure Sam has real Cute Avalanche merch that you can actually go out and purchase, so it's probably worth checking that out as well.
We do. I believe you go to cuteavalanche.com/merch. Could be /store or /shop, but I believe it's /merch.
Okay, awesome. And it's funny, I've actually got and I'm just being distracted by the comments now. But Nathan's sort of saying he'd love a mug, and I do actually have one, and I've never actually used it because I don't know what it is about me, but I kind of like drinking out of glass. But I do have a ceramic mug that has it on there.
Yeah,
Anyway, so this has been a lot of fun. I hope this has been useful for some of you. We do, if you are just joining us for the first time today, we do this on a weekly basis. So actually go and, wherever you happen to be watching this, because we are in all of the various places, if you can go and like and subscribe, that would be awesome. We would love you for that. And if there are any particular topics you'd like us to cover in the future, please let us know in the chat. We'd love to hear from you. But until next week, have a great time. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, guys. Bye.